I must have misheard you, because it sounded like you just suggested we wake up the humans. First Officer Zexley fidgeted with her datapad, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the light of the bridge's holographic displays. With all due respect, Admiral, we're running out of options. The swarm is less than 3 cycles from reaching the core worlds, and the combined fleet just lost another battle at Proxima Centauri. There's a reason Earth is listed as a restricted system, officer. The Admiral's tentacles now twisted into what any seasoned crew member knew was his lecture mode configuration. Do you know why every fallen civilization in the galaxy had warning beacons around that particular rock? Sir, I've read the historical archives, but nothing. The Arthix Empire ruled half the galaxy for 10,000 years. Then they decided to investigate Earth. 3 months later, poof, gone. The Vraxian Dominion, same story. The Collective? They didn't even last 2 weeks after poking that hornet's nest. Zexley's crystalline plates clicked together in frustration. That was over 300 years ago, sir. The humans have been in cryosleep since the Great Accord. They agreed to it. Yes, after nearly burning down half the sector in what they called diplomatic misunderstandings. Vkr'lak waved a tentacle dismissively. The Accord wasn't just for our protection. It was for theirs too. They recognized their own enthusiasm for conflict was becoming problematic. But sir, that's exactly why we need them. Zexley projected a hologram showing the latest battle statistics. Red dots representing destroyed Allied ships far outnumbered the few green survivors. The swarm is unlike anything we've faced. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they definitely don't show mercy. Sound familiar? The Admiral's tentacles drooped slightly. He'd lost 3 squadrons in the last engagement alone. Good crews, experienced veterans, all gone in minutes against the relentless biological horror that was the swarm. Do you know what the humans called their final military exercise before entering cryosleep? He asked quietly. No, sir. Operation Nap Time. They thought it was hilarious. Their lead general, I'll never forget this, said, and I quote, "Wake us up if something fun happens." Then he winked. Do you know what a wink is, officer? I believe it's a facial gesture, sir. It's their way of saying, I'm definitely not joking, but I'm pretending to joke because it's more fun that way. The humans had many such contradictions. They called their most devastating weapons peacekeepers. Their elite warriors would sing children's songs while in combat. They named their doomsday devices after Greek deities and cartoon characters. A new alert flashed across the bridge's main screen. Another colony had gone dark. Zexley's voice was barely a whisper. We've lost New Genesis, sir. Population of 3 billion. The Admiral stared at the screen for a long moment, his tentacles completely still, a rare sight for his species. Computer, he finally said. Bring up archive file H1, subsection, last transmission from Earth. The screen flickered, showing a human in what they called a Hawaiian shirt, standing at a podium. The timestamp showed it was from the day of the Great Accord. So, yeah, we get it, the human was saying, somehow maintaining what they called a straight face, while wearing the most chromatic assault of a garment ever created. Humanity needs a timeout. Fair enough. We'll take a nice long nap, and you folks can wake us up if the galaxy catches fire or something. Just try not to need us, because let me tell you, we are absolute nightmares before our first coffee. The recording ended. Vkr'lak turned to his first officer. Send the wake-up signal, he said quietly, and may whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all. The response from Earth was nearly instantaneous. A single text message, in what the archives identified as the Comic Sans font. New phone who dis? JK, firing up the coffee makers now. Give us 10 mins to stretch and we'll help you kick some alien-ass. Vkr'lak's tentacles writhed in horror. They're already making jokes. We're doomed. 48 hours later, the first human ships emerged from Earth's atmosphere. They had names painted on their hulls that made Vkr'lak's translator struggle. Hold My Beer, Leroy Jenkins, Vibe Check, and perhaps most disturbingly, UW, what's this? The human fleet commander's first transmission to the Allied forces was equally concerning. Hey guys, thanks for the wake-up call. Quick question. These swarm thingies, they're the bad guys, right? Like, we can go full chaos monkey on them? No diplomatic solutions needed? Before Vkr'lak could respond, Zexley had already sent back a confirmation. Oh, thank God, came the reply. We were worried we'd have to do the whole peaceful first contact song and dance again. That was such a pain last time. All right, folks, you know the drill. Protocol fuck around and find out is now in effect. The Admiral watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as the human ships began blasting what their archives identified as death metal on all frequencies. The swarm ships, previously moving in perfect synchronization, began showing signs of confusion. "Are they playing music during combat?" Zexley asked incredulously. "Oh, it gets worse," Vkr'lak replied, his tentacles curling in resignation. "Watch." The human ships had begun flying in patterns that seemed to defy both physics and common sense. The Hold My Beer was doing barrel rolls while firing its main cannon. Leroy Jenkins was charging straight into the heart of the swarm formation, somehow surviving through what appeared to be sheer audacity. Vibe Check was deploying what the humans called weaponized memes, quantum-encoded information packets that caused swarm ships to literally blue screen and crash into each other. And ooh, what's this was... Well, Vkr'lak decided he'd rather not describe what that ship was doing. Some things were better left undocumented. "Sir," one of the bridge officers called out, "the humans are requesting permission to deploy something called dabbing on them haters." "Granted," Vkr'lak said wearily. "At this point, just to prove anything they ask for. It's not like the galaxy could get any more bizarre." He would soon regret those words. The human ships formed up into what they called a poggers formation. Vkr'lak made a mental note to purge that term from his translator, and then, well, the official after-action report would describe it as a reality-bending display of technological warfare, combined with psychological trauma. The unofficial version, shared over drinks in bars across the galaxy, would simply state, the humans did a TikTok dance with their battleships while deploying antimatter warheads. The Swarm, an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for decades, apparently had no protocol for dealing with capital ships performing choreographed dance moves while unleashing apocalyptic destruction. Their perfectly coordinated hive minds suffered what human technicians would later term a total bruh moment. In less than 6 hours, the battle was over. The swarm retreated in what could only be described as confused panic, their usually perfect formation now resembling a group of startled cats trying to run in different directions at once. Back on the bridge of the Allied Forces flagship, Vkr'lak received the human after-action report. It consisted of a single emoji. "First Officer Zexley," he said slowly. "Remind me again why we thought waking them was a good idea." "Because they saved us, sir?" "Yes, but at what cost? Do you know what they're calling this battle in their logs? Operation Know You. They turned a pivotal military engagement into a meme. And now they're asking if we want to go on something called a victory pub crawl with them." A new message popped up on his screen. "Come on, Admiral Squidward, first round's on us. We promise not to do any gender reveals this time." Vkr'lak's tentacles went completely rigid. Gender reveals? What do they mean this time? What's in the historical archives about gender reveals? Zexley quickly checked her data pad, then turned a paler shade of crystal. "Sir, those files are classified under Things We Don't Talk About, along with something called the Great Florida Incident, and why Hot Pockets are banned in the Andromeda Galaxy." The Admiral stared at the message for a long moment, then reached for what humans had introduced to the galaxy as a stress ball. "Send them our acceptance," he finally said, "but make it clear that under no circumstances are they allowed to bring something called a karaoke machine. The last time that happened, 3 star systems had to be evacuated." "Too late, sir. They're already transmitting the lyrics to something called Sweet Caroline." In the vast darkness of space, amid the wreckage of the greatest battle the galaxy had seen in centuries, thousands of alien ships began receiving the same message. "Sweet Caroline, bum bum bum." And despite himself, despite everything he knew about human chaos theory and their ability to turn any situation into what they called a party, Admiral Vkr'lak found his tentacles swaying to the rhythm. The galaxy, he realized, would never be the same again. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't entirely a bad thing, as long as they kept the gender reveals to a minimum. Later that night, in what used to be a respectable diplomatic lounge and was now the site of what humans called an absolute rager, Vkr'lak watched as various species attempted to learn something called the Macarena. "You know," he said to Zexley, who was trying to figure out how to hold something called a red solo cup with her crystalline appendages, "I think I finally understand why all those ancient civilizations put up warning beacons around Earth." "Because humans are dangerous?" she asked, finally managing to grasp the cup without crushing it. "No," he replied, watching as a group of humans taught a hive mind collective how to do the wave. It's because once you let humans into your galaxy, everything becomes a party. And the scariest part? You start enjoying it. A human floated by, somehow doing a perfect backstroke through the air despite the artificial gravity. Hey, Admiral, we're about to teach everyone beer pong. Want in? We modified it for species without hands. Vkr'lak looked at his stress ball, then at the chaos around him, and made a decision that would probably end up in future warning beacons. You know what? Yes, I do. And that's how the galaxy learned that the only thing more dangerous than angry humans was humans who were having fun. The swarm never came back. Some say they're still trying to process what they witnessed. Others claim that if you tune to the right frequency, you can still hear them trying to figure out what yeet means. As for humanity, they went back to sleep eventually, but not before introducing the galaxy to something they called April Fool's Day. The warning beacons around Earth were updated with a new message. Danger. Extremely powerful civilization in hibernation. Do not wake unless galaxy-threatening emergency occurs. If awakened, prepare for dad jokes, memes, impromptu parties, and possible dance battles. You have been warned. Admiral Vkr'lak. The holographic projection flickered as the Galactic Council representative's image stabilized. Your report about the human intervention is concerning. The Admiral's tentacles were still slightly droopy from what humans called a hangover. Another concept they'd unfortunately introduced to the galaxy. Concerning is one way to put it, Counselor. Effective is another. They named a dreadnought Yubu What's This? Yes. And it worked? It didn't just work. Vkr'lak sighed, reaching for his 7th cup of coffee, yet another human contribution he'd grown dependent on. It became the most efficient ship in the fleet. The humans said something about channeling chaotic energy and embracing the cringe. I've stopped trying to understand their terminology. The counselor's multifaceted eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep distress among their species. We've received reports that they've begun modifying our standard protocols. Vkr'lak felt his tentacles curl inward. How so? They've added something called Casual Fridays to military dress code. They're teaching our strategic AI systems something called vibe checking. And yesterday, an entire battle group reported their command interfaces had been replaced with something called Discord. Could be worse, Vkr'lak muttered. At least they haven't introduced. They're also requesting permission to establish something called a meme war division. The Admiral dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor in what he could have sworn was a perfect F in musical notation. The humans were even affecting probability itself now. Deny that request immediately, he said. The last thing we need is them weaponizing their... He checked his translator. Their shitposting capabilities. Too late. The counselor's image flickered again, this time from what appeared to be suppressed laughter. They said, and I quote, "Challenge accepted, Boomer." 3 days later, Vkr'lak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as a human tactical officer explained their new strategy against the remaining swarm forces. So basically, the human was saying, pointing to a holographic display that somehow included animated GIFs. We did some analysis of the swarm's communication patterns, right? Turns out their hive mind processes information kind of like a neural network. And you know what neural networks hate? Logical paradoxes, suggested Zexley. Better, the human grinned. Shitposts. The display changed to show what appeared to be a series of images and text that made Vkr'lak's translator have an existential crisis. These, the human continued, are what we call cursed images. They defy explanation. They shouldn't exist. They make you feel uncomfy in your soul. And when we broadcast them directly into the swarm's hive mind, they'll be confused? Vkr'lak offered hopefully. Oh, they'll be more than confused. We're going to give an alien hive mind the digital equivalent of eating a weird cheese dream before bed and watching surreal memes at 3 a.m. Zexley's crystalline structure made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Is that why your new ships are decorated with something called Neon Cat? Psychological warfare. The human nodded sagely. The swarm operates on perfect logic and order. We're going to introduce them to chaos theory, as interpreted by sleep-deprived college students hopped up on energy drinks. Vkr'lak watched as the human fleet assembled into what they called a POG formation. He still refused to learn what that meant. Each ship now sported holographic projections of various mimetic hazards that the Admiral's eyes seemed to slide right off of. Beginning Operation Cursed Timeline, the human tactical officer announced cheerfully. Broadcasting directly to swarm frequencies now. The next few minutes would later be classified under things that probably shouldn't have worked but did anyway, because humans. The swarm ships, upon receiving what humans called prime cursed content, began executing maneuvers that defied both physics and sanity. Are they trying to dab? Zexley asked in disbelief. Worse, Vkr'lak replied, watching as an entire swarm battle group attempted to recreate something called a TikTok dance challenge. They're becoming infected with human culture. The human tactical officer was practically bouncing with excitement. Oh, it gets better. Watch this. We're about to introduce them to something called vintage vine energy. Before Vkr'lak could protest, the human fleet began broadcasting what appeared to be 6-second loops of pure chaos into space. The swarm's response was immediate and horrifying. What are they saying? Zexley asked, her crystalline structure vibrating in confusion. The human checked their instruments. They appear to be attempting to communicate by saying yeet repeatedly, while throwing smaller ships at us. Is that bad? Nah, this is great. They're evolving from a hive mind into a meme mind. In about 10 minutes they're going to hit the random each hole's funny phase, and then it's all downhill from there. True to prediction, the swarm forces began exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior. Ships started performing elaborate pranks on each other. Their usually threatening battle screeches were replaced with something called vine quotes. One particularly large vessel appeared to be attempting to recreate something called Gangnam Style, using its fighter squadrons as backup dancers. Status report! Vkr'lak demanded, trying to maintain some semblance of military decorum. Well, the human officer consulted their tablet, which for some reason had cat ears attached to it. The good news is the swarm is no longer a threat to galactic civilization. The bad news is they're now asking if we have games on our phones. Vkr'lak's tentacles drooped in resignation. And the worst news? They want to know when the next galactic raid night is. Apparently they've developed an interest in MMORPGs. The Admiral stared out at the battlefield, where swarm ships were now arranging themselves into what he was told was called a loss.jpg formation. First Officer Zexley, he said quietly, make a note in the official record. The day we weaponized human internet culture was the day we went too far. May future generations forgive us. Already noted, sir, she replied, though the humans are suggesting we call it the Great Rickroll of 2525. In the background, a human ensign was teaching a group of reformed swarm drones how to do something called the Harlem Shake. Vkr'lak reached for his stress ball, only to find it had been replaced with something called a fidget spinner. You know, he said to no one in particular, I'm starting to understand why those ancient civilizations chose extinction over dealing with humans. A message popped up on his screen. Heard you were talking shit like we wouldn't notice. The Admiral quickly composed a reply. No, you. And in that moment he realized he too had been infected by human mimetic warfare. The galaxy would never be the same. But at least now they had Wi-Fi. Somewhere in the depths of space, a lone swarm scout ship picked up a transmission from Earth. It was something called a cat video. The ship immediately changed course to share this vital intelligence with the rest of the hive mind. The video went viral in 6 dimensions. And that's how the galaxy learned that the only thing more infectious than a plague was human culture. The warning beacons around Earth were updated once again. Additional warning. Exposure to human mimetic content may result in spontaneous dance parties, uncontrollable urges to pet dangerous creatures, addiction to caffeine, and the inability to communicate without using emojis. Management is not responsible for any reality breaches caused by excessive dabbing. They added another postscript. PPS. Yes, they will try to teach your eldritch horrors how to do TikTok dances. No, you cannot stop them. Yes, it will probably work. Listen, Admiral Vkr'lak said to the assembled Galactic Council, his tentacles twitching with what his therapist had diagnosed as chronic meme exposure. I know how this looks. The Council Chamber's holographic displays showed various scenes from across the galaxy. A former swarm hive ship hosting what humans called a raid night. 3 different species attempting to recreate something called a flash mob. And most disturbingly, an entire sector that had somehow been converted into what humans termed a giant vibe check zone. Do you? The Council Elder's bioluminescent patches flickered in distress. Because from where we're floating, it appears that humanity has transformed our military crisis into something they call a massive multiplayer gaming session. MMO. Vkr'lak corrected automatically, then immediately regretted knowing that term. And technically, they prefer to call it turning the galaxy into one big Discord server. First Officer Zexley, standing beside him, helpfully projected a hologram showing the latest statistics. If we look at the bright side, galactic conflict is down 97%. Though that might be because everyone's too busy trying to figure out something called Among Us in space. Now it's actually in space. A council member whose species consisted entirely of sentient gas clouds pulsed in agitation. They've infected the swarm with what they call meme culture. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? Very, Vkr'lak offered. The swarm hive mind submitted a petition this morning. They want to establish something called a Twitch stream. They're planning to speedrun their next invasion attempt and want to any% the galaxy for the content. The Admiral's tentacles went completely still. That's actually rather concerning. Oh, it gets worse, another council member chimed in. They've started using something called POG in official diplomatic communications. The chamber fell silent as this horror sank in. Even the sentient gas clouds seemed to condense slightly in dismay. However, Zexley interjected, her crystalline form catching the light in what humans had taught her was a dramatic entrance gleam. You can't deny the results. The swarm is no longer a threat to galactic civilization. They're too busy trying to become what humans call content creators. She brought up another holographic display, this one showing former swarm drones wearing what appeared to be tiny streaming headsets. They've even started their own esports league. And this is good? The council elder asked cautiously. Well, Vkr'lak said, pulling up his own datapad, which now, thanks to human influence, had a case decorated with something called kawaii space cats. Let me put it this way. Would you rather have them trying to devour our planets, or trying to get more subscribers? They're still invading planets, one council member pointed out. Yes, but now they yell, "It's just a prank, bro," and leave if anyone objects. They've replaced their biological warfare with something called ratio attempts, and their newest flagship is named Subscribe to My Only Swarms. The council chamber erupted in a mixture of confused noises, ranging from ultrasonic vibrations to quantum fluctuations of distress. That's not even the worst part, Vkr'lak continued, his tentacles curling into what his species considered a bruh moment configuration. The humans have started teaching them about something called speedrunning strats. Is that dangerous? The elder asked. They're trying to figure out how to clip through reality to invade planets faster, but only for achievement hunting purposes. Zexley pulled up another hologram, this one showing a swarm battle group attempting to recreate something called a backwards long jump with their entire fleet. They've already found 3 exploits in the laws of physics. The humans are very proud. The council elder's bioluminescence dimmed to what could only be described as an existential crisis. And what do the humans have to say about all this? Vkr'lak checked his messages. They just sent a response. It's just the letter L followed by ratio plus skill issue plus no maidens. What does that mean? Nobody knows. But it's provocative. Gets the people going. Just then, an alert flashed across the chamber's main display. The swarm had just uploaded something called a Galaxy Any% speedrun. Gone wrong. Not clickbait. Real. Oh no, Vkr'lak muttered. They've learned about YouTube titles. The video showed a swarm fleet attempting to conquer a solar system in record time, only to be interrupted by what appeared to be a spontaneous dance battle with a human patrol group. The description read, "Smash that like button and don't forget to hit the bell icon for more epic invasion fails." Admiral, the council elder said slowly. Do you remember when our biggest concern was just regular galactic annihilation? Good times, Vkr'lak agreed nostalgically. Simple times. Sir, Zexley interrupted, her crystalline form vibrating with what might have been suppressed laughter. The humans are requesting permission to teach the swarm something called parkour. Denied, Vkr'lak said immediately. They say they're going to do it anyway and stream it live on something called Twitch Plays Galactic Domination. The Admiral reached for his stress ball, only to find it had been replaced with something called a squishmallow that made ooh-woo noises when squeezed. You know what? He said finally. Let them. At this point, we might as well embrace the chaos. It's better than the alternative. Which is? The humans getting bored. You don't want to know what happened the last time humans got bored. There's a reason the Andromeda Galaxy won't let us have hot pockets anymore. The council chamber's AI chose that moment to play something called elevator music. except it was a lo-fi remix of various swarm battle screeches. Vkr'lak looked at his coffee cup, which now had Live, Laugh, Invade printed on it in Comic Sans. "First Officer Zexley," he said wearily, "make a note in the official record. The day we let humans teach the swarm about internet culture was the day the galaxy lost its last brain cell. But at least we're having fun." "Already noted, sir. Also, the swarm is asking if we want to join their Minecraft server." In the vast expanse of space, a new message appeared on the warning beacons around Earth. "Final warning. Exposure to humans may result in the complete transformation of your civilization into what they call extremely online. Side effects include spontaneous gaming sessions, uncontrollable urge to create content, addiction to virtual currencies, and the inability to take anything seriously ever again." "They want to do what with the Galactic Core?" Admiral Vkr'lak's tentacles twisted into what his medical professional had recently diagnosed as advanced mimetic shock. First Officer Zexley's crystalline form sparkled with barely contained amusement as she read from her datapad. "The humans want to, and I quote, RGB that bad boy up. They say the galaxy's aesthetic needs, a serious gaming upgrade." The Admiral stared at the holographic display showing the proposal. Somehow, the humans had convinced the reformed swarm to help them install what they called sick LED strips around the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center. And the swarm agreed to this because they said it would boost their subscriber count. Also something about epic collab potential. Vkr'lak reached for his 9th cup of coffee, which now came in flavors like Pogger's Pumpkin Spice and Gamer Supernova. "Do I want to know how they're planning to install lights around a black hole?" The project proposal just says yeet and yoink with a lot of emojis. "That's not physically possible." "The humans said you'd say that." They responded with bet and something called a chaos theory speedrun strat. Before Vkr'lak could process this information, a new alert flashed across the bridge's main screen. The humans had somehow already started the project, broadcasting it live across something they called SpaceTube. The stream's title read, "Installing RGB on a Black Hole? Gone Quantum." Physics police called. "Sir," one of the bridge officers called out, "the stream already has trillion views across 17 dimensions." Vkr'lak watched in horror as human ships, decorated with what appeared to be gaming peripherals, began what they called a pro-gamer move near the event horizon. "The swarm ships are providing background music," Zexley noted. "They're remixing their own battle screeches with something called dubstep." "Has anyone considered," Vkr'lak said slowly, "that maybe putting RGB lighting on a supermassive black hole might have consequences?" The humans said, and again I quote, "That's a future us problem." Just then, the black hole began to pulse with colors that shouldn't exist in this reality. The chat feed exploded with what humans called pog emotes. "Sir," another officer reported, "we're getting reports of increased frame rates across the entire sector." "Frame rates?" Vkr'lak's tentacles curled in confusion. "The galaxy doesn't have frame rates." "It does now. The humans say they've overclocked reality." The Admiral watched as the Galactic Core transformed into what could only be described as gamer aesthetic. The swarm ships had formed into what they called a hype circle, their biological architecture now sporting RGB patterns that would give an elder god a seizure. "First Officer Zexley," he said wearily, "please tell me this isn't streaming to other galaxies." Well, she checked her datapad, which now had a custom RGB case that synchronized with her crystalline structure. Andromeda just sent a message. They want to know if we're hosting a galaxy-wide LAN party. And the humans already replied with a server invite. Vkr'lak's tentacles drooped in resignation. "Do I want to know what they named the server?" "Epic Gamer Galaxy. No noobs. RGB required. Void creatures welcome." The Admiral stared at the now rainbow-pulsing galactic core, where human ships were performing what they called sick tricks near the event horizon, while swarm vessels provided EDM background music. "You know," he said to no one in particular, "I remember when space was just an infinite void of existential terror." "The humans say they've fixed that," Zexley replied. "They're calling it Void 2.0, now with RGB. A new message popped up on the main screen. "Yo, Admiral Squidward, we're thinking of hosting a galactic battle royale next week. Totally safe. Definitely won't break space-time. Much. You in? Before Vkr'lak could respond, another message appeared. NVM already announced it. Check out this sick trailer we made with the swarm. The trailer, which somehow compressed several war crimes into a 3-minute montage set to something called bass-boosted space shanties, had already gone viral across 3 temporal dimensions. Sir, Zexley said, trying to maintain some semblance of military decorum despite her crystals now pulsing in sync with the RGB core. The Galactic Council is requesting an emergency meeting. Let me guess, the humans are already there? They've converted the council chamber into something called a streaming setup. The Elder's podium now has gaming chair. Vkr'lak looked at his stress ball, which had somehow gained RGB capabilities and now pulsed in time with his rising blood pressure. You know what the scariest part is? He said to Zexley. I'm starting to think the humans' chaos is actually... working? How so? Well, the swarm is too busy being content creators to threaten anyone. 3 previously warring species have formed an esports team, and... He checked his datapad. Apparently our GDP has tripled since we introduced microtransactions to the galactic economy. Don't forget the memes, Zexley added helpfully. They've replaced 12 different diplomatic protocols with something called vibe checks. The galactic core pulsed with a particularly aggressive rainbow pattern, accompanied by what humans called a beat drop. Several nearby solar systems reported spontaneous dance parties breaking out. First Officer Zexley, Vkr'lak said, watching as humanity continued to remix the fabric of reality. Make a note in the official record. The day we let humans decorate the galaxy was the day we admitted that chaos was actually the natural order of things. Also, add a warning about epilepsy risks near the core now. Already done, sir. Also, the humans want to know if you're free for something called Minecraft Monday. The warning beacons around Earth were updated yet again. Critical update. The galaxy now supports RGB. Side effects may include spontaneous gaming sessions, reality overclocking, void aesthetics, and the uncontrollable urge to say "let's go" when approaching a black hole. A final postscript was added. PPPPS. Yes, they will try to make your cosmic horror story into a viral video. Yes, it will get more views than your actual invasion. No, we don't know how they got Wi-Fi in the void. And somewhere near the galactic core, a swarm influencer was teaching its followers how to get the perfect selfie angle, with an RGB black hole in the background. The galaxy would never be the same, but at least it had good lighting now. The end, until someone decides to overclock a neutron star.